Hi there, I'm Anders Ringman, songwriter and co-producer of Dreams in the Witch House. We're here today in Stockholm, Sweden, and we're lucky enough to have Doug Blair with us, guitarist of W.A.S.P, of course, and also featured lead guitarist for 2 tracks on Dreams in the Witch House. So Doug, tell me a little about your background.
Well, I come from far, far away across the ocean, but a very similar city called Boston, and there was a great scene in the 80s and 90s in Boston with a lot of original bands, and we had a really cool power trio called Run 21. He was in W.A.S.P for a while. He's the one that got me in W.A.S.P, Stet.
Stet, yeah.
I don't know who that guy is. Just played lead guitar and sang in the trio, kind of forcing me to try to fill up a lot of space and resulting in some of these wacky guitars that I'm surrounded by, and also by way of this one in particular getting into W.A.S.P because it's got an acoustic neck on the top. So that's how I ended up here in Stockholm by way of touring with W.A.S.P and recording with W.A.S.P, and the band is most popular in Finland and Sweden at this point, which is fine with me.
Tell me, how did you get involved in Dreams in the Witch House?
We have had so many, great opening acts over the 7 years I've been back in W.A.S.P and touring a lot. One of the best ones was a band called Chris Laney's Animal, I believe it was, when they opened for us. Or was
Well, he had this band with Randy Piper.
That
called
was
the Randy Piper's Animal.
Yeah.
And then he did his own thing.
right. So
Chris
when
Laney.
we had him open for us, Randy wasn't in the band, but we were all really impressed with him and the band, and we made friends. And I had told Chris at that point that I wanted to try to find, maybe some projects around Sweden to play a lead on or get involved in. And one day he came to see us in Sundsvall about a year ago from right now, and he said, I got something pretty cool going on here. You got to check it out. And that's what it was.
Tell me about the recording. You did that in Hollywood.
Yeah, I had been, trying to figure out a way to record it at home like Bruce and other guys who contributed to the record did. I don't have a really fancy home studio. It just by serendipity turned out that we were rehearsing last May or April in Los Angeles for the one W.A.S.P show that we ended up having. And I come to find out that the main, director, operations manager, producer guy happened to live on my drive from where I was staying in North Hollywood to where we rehearsed in Burbank. Really lucky to be able to organize a recording session after a long, full day of rehearsing with W.A.S.P for me, which is the best time to try to just
So you were
play.
warmed up.
I was warmed up. I was kind of burned out, but in a great headspace. So I drove straight from rehearsal to a great little studio that Mike works in, and we just had some beers and let it roll.
And you play on 2 songs on the album?
Yeah, I played on The Nightmare and the Power Ballad, which, they had operating titles or working titles when I was working on them, so I'm not familiar with the
I think
the
it's called
final.
Between Reality and Dream.
That's what it is, and that's right where I live all the time, so it's perfect.
Obviously now you've heard the album a couple of times. What do you think about the rest of the songs or the
It's
entire
killer.
piece?
I hadn't heard how heavy and how dynamic they are. So it was great to hear it last night at the release party at full volume and really feel the production. And Chris did a great job on the production, Leonard. So the musical side of it is really strong and powerful. And I think that the amount of dialogue that goes between the songs is just right. The instruments that I used are all out in California. In fact, this guitar, to show a really scary picture, this actual guitar is what I used for, I think, both of the leads on The Witch House.
Oh,
So this has ended up being one of my best sounding recording guitars, and I've used it on the ballads. My favorite leads in W.A.S.P are a couple of the ballads. That guitar I covered with red snakeskin, and it made it like a pound heavier, but somehow it made the tone really great. So now it's just a studio guitar,
all right.
and that's like Blackie's favorite. He's like, get the red one.
Talking about guitars, you're known for modifying guitars and even building most of your own guitars.
Yeah.
And you have this thing called the Guitar Cross.
That's this right here. This was also designed for Run 21 for my bass player Jimmy to be able to play some guitar parts behind me.
Solos and
Yeah,
stuff,
so got
So
guitar
has it
and
gone
bass strings.
into production or?
No, I've just made 3 prototypes, and what's cool is we hopefully can use this to bring the Witch House music to the stage and be able to have a small, really efficient band that can cover all the parts without having needing a second
yeah.
guitar player and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
hopefully Chris Laney can can handle this machine, which I'm sure he will.
Are there any talks at this stage about bringing it to stage?
Absolutely. We've got a date in February that we're all shooting for. It's in Warwick, Rhode Island, which is ironically kind of, Run 21 played all around that area. That's where we used to be popular. It would be incredible to go from kind of concert band presentation with the actors on stage singing, and then go drop the band away into the dark, and here's the dialogue.
Well, W.A.S.P, of course, are known also for their concept album, The Crimson Idol. And I understand you still play a lot of those songs live.
We do. They're kind of the center point of the live set, because they've always been one of the strongest songs for the diehard fans, and for the it was an obscure album. It really was a departure from all the other records that were made before or after. Kind of, it was loosely patterned or inspired by Tommy.
Yeah.
And you have the Who and bands like Queen and doing really great records that can easily be brought to the play stage to make them work.
Do you see any similarities between Dreams in the Witch House and the Crimson Idol? I know the guy dies at the end in both stories.
Yeah,
does it really have
Crimson
to die
Idol
because it's a rock thing?
It's a rock tragedy. It's a typical rock tragedy that the main actor is your musician, your troubled musician with the broken family, and at the end is hanging from a string by guitar strings. Whereas Dreams in the Witch House is much more, I think, of a really developed fantasy into other dimensions, which is amazing that he's reaching characters in so many other places, and it's not quite as reflective of just his own character. Of course, it is a lot about his own character, but it's all the external things. The external evils in the Crimson Idol, I believe, are kind of normal societal things that outcasts like us have to fight with. This is from 1984, but it's amazing that's the same guitar. That still is like the #1 recording guitar out. He still has this bass. That's the one he would play with one hand all the time.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's so cool.